Hey guys, welcome back to the Breaking Through Code channel. Today we are looking at check constraints. Now this is a type of integrity constraint in SQL. So integrity constraints basically ensure your data remains consistent. So when designing your database schemas, these constraints are added, okay? They are used to restrict the type of information entered to a table, meaning the data is accurate and reliable. Okay. We can have table level constraints and column level constraints. Examples of these constraints include primary keys, foreign keys, and the not null constraints. Now, the check constraint specifies a requirement that must be met by each row in a table. Okay. Now, this constraint must be represented in the form of a predicate. Now, a predicate is a function of a set of parameters returning a Boolean result, which it can either be true or false, and depending on nulls, the predicate can also return unknown. So here's an example of a predicate where the price variable, is being compared to the zero value. Now, if the price variable is greater than or equal to 0, then it will return true. Okay. If it's not, it will return false. Now, if the price variable is null, then it evaluates to an unknown, which will then basically not enforce this constraint. Okay. Okay, let's get into an example. Okay, so we have a table in SQL that stores all our characters, and in that table, we have a column that represents the age of the character, and realistically, the age of a person ranges from between 0 and 1 and 140. However, in our character universe, okay, the one we're creating this table for, the age ranges from 1 to 1,000 years old. So we shouldn't be able to insert a character in our table that violates this age range between 1 and 1,000. It just wouldn't make sense in the rules of our character universe. So let's head over to SQL Server Management Studios and see what I mean. So let's pull up our character table, okay, the one that we created before. Okay, if you've been following along in our tutorials, okay. This is our character table, okay. Now, as you can see, we kind of kept a realistic age range here because all our characters are falling between that 1 and 1,000 age range, so that's great. But however, let's see if we can violate that, age range by writing this query and running this query. So we want to insert into this TBL character table. Okay, and we want to insert these values. Okay, so we want to insert an ID of 6, a name, a character name of Visenya. Let's go with that. Hopefully that's how you spell that. Now we want to insert an age that Visenya is minus 2,000, okay, which doesn't really make any sense. And then obviously a gender of, actually we'll go with gender of 2, I think, because that represents female if I'm correct. Cool. So let's run this query and see what happens. Oh, actually, let's see what genders we have in this gender. We don't have any genders in this gender table, so let's insert null then. Okay. Hopefully that lets us do that. Great. Okay, so now let's review our table again and see what we've got. Cool. So if we are reviewing this table in the future, we now have a record that doesn't make sense. Okay. Because we've got this Visenya character and they're of age minus 2,000. So the question is, how do we lock this down so that when we add data similar to what we just added, it throws an error? Is it doable? Yes, it is. Okay, so we can use what's called a check constraint, which has a fitting name that checks the values we enter, and if it falls outside of the range we require, which in this case is 1 to 1000, it will throw an error. Now, there's two ways to obviously add a constraint, which is kind of the format we've been going through, we've been seeing in all the tutorials so far. So obviously there's a designer way and then there's a query way. So we'll start off with the designer way. So we need to find the constraint folder, which is located in our table character table. So when we right click on that constraint folder, we can then click new constraint, and that will open up this window. Okay, so in this general section, okay, we can add a Boolean expression or predicate as we described earlier. So we just head over here and click these three dots here, okay, and write that expression. So the expression we are trying to go for is we want an age between 1 and 1000. So we express that by saying age, which is the name of the column, has to be greater than 0, which is what we want, okay, and age has to be less than or equal to 1000. Okay, so let's click OK. Wait, what's going on there? Why did that? Oh, sorry. I'm mixing up another programming language here. Sorry, it's and there we go. So if I write and there, okay, so that should work fine. Okay, cool. So let's then let's give this check constraint a name. So the convention is obviously we've got CK, which represents check constraint. Then you have the table name, okay, which is a TBL character. That's the table name, and then you have the column at the end of it. So let's go with the column, which is where we're putting the constraint on, which is age. Okay, so we can click close, and then we can save that. Right click here and click save. Okay. Oh, we get an error. As you can see there, unable to add check constraint. Unable to add constraint, and that's the name of my constraint. Alter table statement conflicts with check constraint. Okay. Now, the reason why we get this error is because, well, we have a bad entry already in our database table that violates the constraint already. So what we want to do is try and get rid of that constraint, and then it should work fine. So let's go with that. So let's get rid of this bad value we inserted earlier. So we go delete from table character, which is where ID, which is the ID equals 6. So we want to delete that entry there. So let's run that, execute that query. Let's check if that's gone. Okay, cool. So that bad entry has now gone. So let's go back to our constraint. Okay, and let's save that. Okay, and see if it works now. Cool, it's allowed us to save it now. Okay, so let's show you where this error came from. Okay, just so you're aware. Sorry, if I refresh that table just to make sure that new constraint's been added. Okay, so that's the new constraint we've added. Check constraint, table character, age. So let's modify that. Okay, so just so you know where this constraint comes from, it comes from this rule here, which says check existing data on, if we expand that a bit, creation or re-enabling. So this is set to yes. So at the time that we saved it, it was checking that table, the character table, to see if there was any anything that violates the check constraint that we want to add, and yes, there was. So that's why it failed. But in this instance, you can obviously change that to no if you don't want it to check it before. But we obviously want to leave it as yes. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's try and execute the query now. This same query again that falls outside of our age range, and see if it works, if it allows us to do that. So let's highlight this, and then let's do that insert again. We get an error. Okay, so the insert statement conflicted with the check constraint. So that's the check constraint we created. The conflict occurred in the relevant table, the database table, and then the column. So that check constraint is working nicely. Now let's correct that age, okay, and see if it works again. So Vasenya, she's been around for about 300 years. So she's age 300. So let's run this and see if that works. Brilliant. And if when we refresh our table, we should see Vasenya's gone in nicely. Cool. Okay, now let's get rid of this constraint, this new constraint that we created, because I want to show you how to do it through the query syntax. Okay, so how we can get rid of that constraint is we can type in alter table, and that's the copy that TBL character. Okay, and that what we want to do is we want to drop constraint, and the constraint was check constraint underscore the table character underscore age. Okay, so now we want to drop that constraint. Cool, that completes successfully, and when we refresh the table, we now see that constraint is gone. Okay, so let's add our constraint back up again. Okay, this time using the query syntax, and it's pretty straightforward. We can even copy some of what we've written here. Okay, so it's alter table again, alter table characters, drop we don't want to drop the constraint this time. We want to add a constraint this time. Okay, and this is the constraint name that we want to give it. But then we want to specify that we want to give add a check constraint. Okay, and then what are we checking? We are checking that age is greater than 0, and the proper syntax this time, age is less than or equal to 1000. Perfect. Cool. So let's add that constraint now. Cool, that worked nicely. Okay, and then when we refresh our table, let's refresh that, we should then see that that constraint's been added again. So if we now try and add another character just to make sure it works, David. Ooh, David. And let's violate that constraint again. We should get that error. Brilliant. So there we go. Great. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you learned something, please like it. If you want to learn more, please subscribe. And most importantly, have a great day.